Good afternoon and welcome back to World Talks. Now we turn our attention to Israel. Tens of thousands of people took to the streets in Israel after the bodies of 6 hostages held by Hamas were recovered. In addition, the largest trade union in Israel launched a general strike to press the government to reach a deal with Hamas. To discuss the current situation in the country, I am joined here now by Amir Weitmann, head of the Libertarian Caucus, Likud party. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
So what happens next? Protests have been taking place for quite a while. People have grown increasingly frustrated with the government. What will Benjamin Netanyahu do?
Well, first of all, it's important to know that, and very unfortunately, this strike, first of all, is illegal today. The strike was stricken down essentially in the tribunal, which decided that the strike was illegal, and then actually, from a constitutional point of view, its decision from today is an important precedent, which is going to forbid essentially in the future similar demonstrations, and in that respect, it's actually positive and important. Beyond that, it's unfortunate that that politics has taken over the issues of war and peace in Israel as well. What we saw yesterday was essentially a show of part of the left wing, which took to the street because they essentially don't trust the government. That's the crux of the matter. Although it has to be said that polls taken today show that a large majority of the Israeli public is against the strike and against the demonstration, and actually supports Netanyahu's position in this negotiation. So what's going to happen next? I don't know. It's clear that Israel has been weakened by these demonstrations, and all I can say is that I hope that the Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government will find the strengths to not collapse and avoid the capitulation against the Hamas, because from a purely military point of view, essentially, the war has been more or less won. And it would be a shame to throw away all the successes of the war because we are under public pressure.
Right, but this could also be adding fuel to the fire, right? Formally forbidding people, these trade unions to protest. But let me ask you about these recently.
I'm sorry to correct you. It's not that it's forbidding people. There are laws in Israel. People have the right to demonstrate. This is not about demonstration. This is about a strike. There are laws which say when it is lawful and when it is illegal to strike, and strikes have a purpose, which is to deal with labor disputes, and you cannot strike just when you want because you feel like it. There's a large amount of disruption, which is to the wider public, which is caused by a strike, and therefore you can't just strike because you want to strike. So if you want to strike, you have to have a reason to strike, and there was no reason to strike except the fact that the head of the Histadrut, the labor union, wanted to strike. That is not enough of a reason, and therefore the tribunal decided the strike is not lawful. So this is not about demonstration. Demonstrations themselves are perfectly lawful. This is about strike.
Right, sir. So let me ask you about Benjamin Netanyahu's standing within the party.
Right, so
go ahead.
Netanyahu's standing has been better over the years, I can say. It's not a secret. I think we can see it in the polls for a long time now, that a large part of the Israeli public has lost confidence and trust in Netanyahu. It is a fact. It's not something I like or dislike. It's just a statement of fact. Having said that, you also can see in the past few months that the Likud again is strengthening progressively in the polls because, if we're talking about the strategy and the tactics of the war, we can see that some people within the Israeli establishment are essentially in favor of ending the war without having reached the main goals of the war. And I think a large part of the majority of the Israeli public feels that this would be a mistake, and this would be harming Israel's long-term strategic and security interests. And therefore, funnily enough, the standing of Netanyahu over the past few months has actually strengthened, as opposed to what it was, I would say, maybe 6 months ago.
Oh, you mean within the party? So there's no one trying to challenge him? Perhaps.
At this point, no. I don't think that anybody trying would lose. I think, as opposed to what it was 6 months ago, when people were pretty much openly talking about this has stopped, exactly for the reasons I mentioned before.
So among the recent victims, the recovered was also an American, right? Mr. Hirsch Goldberg Poland. So my question is, how does this influence the American-Israeli relationship? We've had Kamala Harris express her condolences, of course, but what is the dynamic between the U.S. and Israel at the moment?
Well, I think that, Mr. Hirsch's parents just, I think, last week or the week before were at the Democratic Convention, and they gave a very powerful and moving speech, and the whole convention and really the whole of America and the world was very, very moved. And just, again, 10 days later or so, the son was brutally murdered in the most barbaric and horrifying way by the Hamas terrorists. So I think that everybody is furious in America because he was an American citizen, but everybody, all human beings of conscience are extremely upset everywhere in the world at what happened. Now, what dynamics is it going to have? I don't think it's going to have any significant consequences over the long term. I think in the short term, to the extent that Israel takes more drastic action against Hamas, I think it will be very difficult for anybody in America to oppose this sort of action after these circumstances. And it may give more short-term operational freedom to Israel. I think that is possible, but this is a short-term issue.
So the main issue that the protesters in the country are trying to address is the fact that they want hostages back, the remaining hostages back.
We all want the hostages back, just to be clear.
Right. So what is the strategy now? Because the peace talks are stalling. So what is the strategy? Is government going to answer somehow their demands? Right.
Right. So essentially, the demand of the demonstrators are a demand for Israel to capitulate. They say, okay, we are essentially going to leave the Hamas in place. We are going to withdraw from the Gaza Strip, commit to never going back, and against that, we're going to get maybe a couple of dozen hostages alive and a few dozen bodies. But it's worth the price. That's what they feel. And I think the majority of the Israeli public, and it's not my feeling, these are the polls that have been made today, I think differently. And they think that although we all want, just to be clear, we all want the hostages to be back, we do not want to jeopardize Israel's strategic and security interest over the long term. And therefore, there's a series of conditions that the government has to be firm upon, so that we do not get the hostages, but create a situation where Hamas is essentially going to rebuild the Gaza Strip and its strengths within the Gaza Strip, so that in a few years from now, it will be able and ready to essentially repeat the horrors of October the 7th.
Amir Weitmann, thank you, sir, for being with us. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World.